As is customary, we're going to start with a prayer for the next triennium. Should we stand? If you can all stand. Ovinu Sheba Shemayim, our Father in heaven, grant to us, to all the communities of the house of Israel, strengthen us and give us courage. Make known to us your ways and teach us paths. Grant life and peace to Her Majesty the Queen and bestow upon her blessing and prosperity. Guardian of Israel, who sets free the bound and supports the fallen, we beseech you, in your abundant mercies, to relieve the oppressed, set free those who are held, and bring them forth from trouble, to deliverance and from captivity to redemption. Grant peace, quietude and safety to the Holy Land, bring an end to the distress of its people, hasten salvation, and kindly deal with salvation. V'nimar, Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to give a big welcome to deputies, old deputies and new deputies. We have an unprecedented, I'm told, 100 new deputies that are here for this first board meeting. We're very proud that there's been such huge interest and such a great enthusiasm to be elected. Some of the elections have been extremely close fought and hard won, and it's a real credit to the community that we have a full house today and such an interest in the Board of Deputies. Now, it would be really nice to welcome all the new deputies, so could we start by asking all the new deputies to stand up so we can see who you are? Hey! And one of you, Goodsmith, has a birthday today, so he's spending it with us. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. Now, in my President's statement, I'm going to go through the issues relating to the community, but I just want to stress again how welcome everybody is today. Now, we do know that there have been some issues about deputy validation. I'm going to assure you that there is a plan to address all of those issues, and I'm going to deal with that after the President's statement. So I don't want anyone to be worried about it. We have a plan to make sure that the election process will also run smoothly. So the first thing I would like to do is to approve the last minutes of the last plenary meeting. Has anybody got any comment? Right. Fine, we'll move on. Can you confirm if you accept them? Can you just nod? Thank you. Thank you. Now, because we have also a lot of new deputies here, I'd like to introduce the team to you on the top table, because not everybody knows who we all are. So I'm known. Gillian Meron, to my right, is the board's Chief Executive Officer. Amanda
Bowman, and I'm Chair of the Defence Division.
Speak up.
Stuart MacDonald, and I have a very loud voice. I'm Chair of the Finance and Operations Division and Treasurer.
Sheila Gewolb, delighted and honoured this triennium to be Senior Vice President and Chair of the International Division.
Edwin Schucker, similarly delighted. I'm the Chair of the CNE, which is the Communities and Education Division.
And I'm Tony Leifer. I'm Chairman of the Constitution Committee. I've served 2 terms in that position, which is the maximum, so I will shortly be the outgoing chair.
Come on now. Right, now, I want to remind you that all of us, including Tony Leifer and all the HOs, we are all volunteers with you deputies as well. All of us give up our time, our valuable time, to look after in the interests of the community. So I think it's very important that we remember that. We all want the board to be the place to debate the issues of the day, but everyone needs to remember that when they speak, they are live streamed and they have responsibility for their actions and what they say at the microphone. So for new deputies, can we also say that when you do speak, you've got to give your name and you've got to say what constituency that you represent. Now, it's very important that we speak to each other, even if we disagree, with respect. And we have in that light sent out the code of conduct at the end of last week, and I would encourage every deputy to make sure that the code of conduct has been read. Now, we've got a lot of new people here today, so what we're going to try when speaking is for speaking time to be 2 minutes for each person who wants to come up to the microphone today, and we'll see how that goes for today. In relation to board papers going forwards, we want to remind you that we're only going to send out now board papers by email because we're very conscious of the environment and our resources. And we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to actually get to know deputies rather than just sitting here listening to all of us. So we will have at 3:10 or thereabouts a divisional fair where deputies will have a chance to mingle and have a look at the different divisions and speak to some of the HOs. So I think that that's very, very important. So I want to make those points clear. Coming on now to the second item on our agenda, I want to introduce the divisions. I want to introduce the reports, and we'll go through that, and then we'll take questions. So, can we first have the introduction, please, from Sheila?
Yes, thank you, Marie. Thank you, deputies. I have two items to present. One is the activity report that covers May and June. So we're going back over the divisional work that I have now taken up, but went back to when Richard Verber, who was chair of the division. So this report covers his activities and mine for the last few weeks since we had the meeting. So it's been sent to everybody. I would just like to highlight something that has been brought to my attention to do with the meeting that we had with Marius who works for the board as an international relations officer. We actually met with the Marius Bischoff. We actually met with the acting ambassador in London. We didn't actually go to Germany, so I was asked to make that point quite clear. And that's the item on restitution on the second page. And I'd also like to add the fact that the Icelandic Parliament has now dropped the circumcision bill. And this, we hope, well, we've been thanked by the Jewish community in Iceland for the support from the outgoing President Jonathan Arkush, who actually went to Iceland and supported them with this act. Thank you. So we hope now that Denmark, that is always looking at this issue, will be influenced by the fact that Iceland has dropped this circumcision bill. So a whole list of activities. Very happy if anybody wants to make any comments or ask any questions. I will do my very best to answer. I'm very pleased to be moving forward with this division. I want to thank everybody who worked with me in the old Community and Education division over the last 3 years, and I hope to bring my energies to people, to the new area that I'll be working in. Has anybody got any questions about the activity report at all? Okay, or any comments? So moving forward, as Marie has said, in a few moments you will have the opportunity to speak to people who are going to be chairing the new divisions. We have tables set up at the back of the room, and you'll be able to find out the work and the areas that you hopefully will put yourselves up for to be elected at the July meeting to work in these areas on the new divisions. And the international division will be dealing with promoting peace, security, prosperity and equality for Israel and the Middle East. I won't read the sheet that has been sent out in the welcome packs. Again, if you want any clarification, the work will also cover anti-Semitism, racism and extremism on an international basis. So basically the work that we do to protect the Jewish community in this country. I will be working to take this forward into other areas outside the UK on an international basis and supporting those communities, such as Iceland, that has had a problem. So we're looking at our religious freedoms, Mila, and other issues with Shakita. Post-Holocaust issues, I will be looking to support. Marie is going to the Claims Conference next month in Prague. I have already met with the acting ambassador for Germany, because German and Austrian money goes towards the restitution that the Claims Congress administer, and I will be working in that area. I will also be working with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office on a round table, looking at the work they do to support advocacy for Israel and relationship building, and engaging with the Department for International Trade, especially regarding Brexit. So I hope to be working, or I will be working with all these areas. I'm happy to discuss with any deputies who would like to be involved with this area of work, who would like to put themselves forward for election to this division. As I say, I have a very active division on community and education, and I will not be having a talking shop for an hour and a half on debates relating to Israel. That's what I will not be doing. Very happy for people to come and focus on that area of work, but we will be looking in the international division to having speakers coming in across all areas of the work that I will be addressing. And if people want to work towards supporting Israel and issues they feel very strongly about, absolutely come to my division and it will be discussed, but we will not be spending an hour and a half just on those issues. I want to make that clear. And I'm very happy to speak to people when we're having the fair in half an hour or so, and at that point, thank you for your attention. Again, any questions, perhaps you can come and speak to me directly afterwards, but now I'd like to hand back to Marie. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you please now give your report, Amanda? Thank you.
So, similar to the international report, this covers the period for May and for June. And there was a final meeting of the last triennium held on the 30th of May with Marie in the chair of that meeting. The defence report that you have received covers anti-Semitism and hate crime, and in particular, since the last meeting, we've seen the resignation of Ken Livingstone and the comment from Jeremy Corbyn where he called his departure a sad day. We've also seen the appointment of Gordon Nardell as independent legal counsel, and we continue to press for action on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party in advance to our future engagement with them. On campus affairs, we were disappointed, to say the least, that the National Union of Students National Executive Committee voted to support boycott, divestment and sanctions against Israel, and we made a statement against that. But we were pleased, and you may have seen Marie's comments and statement around the fact that following our work with King's College in London, we were delighted that they accepted to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism. Sheila's covered the issue on medical and religious freedoms around Mila in Iceland, but more broadly on medical and religious freedoms, we've developed proposals for further reform of coroners' services after the judicial review with the London coroner Mary Hassel. And we attended an interfaith roundtable on government proposed reforms on organ donation. More to come on that. We also worked, as previous deputies will be aware, we have a Jewish manifesto for local government, which we disseminated in advance of the local government elections. And key pledges in that manifesto included the adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, support for Jewish schools and care services, and a sympathetic approach to planning issues, for example, around Eruv and the expansion of religious infrastructure. We also joined calls for an inquiry into the wrongful deportation of members of the Windrush generation. Are there any questions on my report?
Thank you. Do you want to come up, Susan? And I will also cover some of these areas in the President's statement. Thank you. Do you want to state your name and constituency? And for those new deputies, we do have a traffic light system. So when the speaker is coming near to the end of the time, you will see amber. When it's red, it's time to finish. And we're just seeing today how we go with 2 minutes. It's just for today. Thank you.
Susan Pascoe, Neostrel Community. In relation to campus issues and the National Union of Students reinstating its boycott, divestments and sanctions policy against Israel, I wanted to ask whether you think a way of challenging it could arise as a result of the Court of Appeal decision 11 days ago on the 6th of June, in which the Palestine Solidarity Campaign of BDS was in effect ruled illegal by the Court of Appeal. I know that Court of Appeal decision isn't covered in these papers because it's fairly recent, and I know that the cases concern completely different contexts, but would you agree that the judicial inclination against BDS in that recent Court of Appeal decision could enable the NUS policy to be challenged as illegal? Thank you.
I certainly think we need to see what we can do to challenge it. There's no question that it's going to be left unchallenged, but it's going to be very difficult as they've passed a motion. But these are all the points that we need to keep remonstrating with, so we definitely will be looking at that. Thank you. And we are very concerned because we've gone through a period of time where we haven't had any BDS motions, so it feels very unpalatable to have another one recently passed. Thank you. Jess.
Okay. First of all, congratulations, President, on your appointment, and good luck for the next 3 years.
Thank you.
Michael Reich.
You have to give your name and constituency, please.
Yes, Michael Reich, Mosaic Reform.
Thank you.
In view of the fact it looks like the Labour Party is not likely to agree to the international agreed definition of anti-Semitism, in particular with regards to individuals not having to accept the concerns that questions about Israel are to the Jewish people. How are we going to tackle the Corbyn issue, bearing in mind that therefore it's very unlikely we're going to see many people expelled from the Labour Party because they'll all put that up as a defence?
Thank you, Michael. So we're closer? Okay. We're following the situation with the Labour Party very closely, and there have been a number of issues over the last weeks that have given us cause for concerns, not least the circumstances around Ken Livingstone's departure. However, at the last meeting that we had with the Labour Party in April, we were offered another meeting in July. We haven't discussed any details of that yet, but we will be discussing and looking at what the best interests of the Jewish community are before we take any further action.
Just to add about the definition, I think you're talking about the two examples relating to Israel. Is that what you're suggesting? That is definitely a backward step because Labour had said they'd accepted the full definition in December 16.
And they've revoked that.
Yes, they're definitely trying to backslide on that. There's no question about that. And in fact, Gordon Nardell QC, who's just been appointed as the independent adjudicator of the disciplinary proceedings, has also said that he is only going to take part of the definition, hatred towards Jews. And of course, that is something that we're going to be having correspondence about. That's not acceptable.
Okay, so going forward, For new deputies, and to remind existing deputies, the priority areas for the Defence Division will be anti-Semitism, racism and extremism, religious freedom, and specifically Shahita Milah, workplace issues, medical issues and family law, and student and campus activity. Similar to the approach that Marie's taking, that Sheila has already talked about in her address, we have and will continue to work through working groups and initiatives that lead the division's work on some issues. So, for example, David Katz is co-chair of Milah UK. We're looking to re-establish the medical group under David Katz's chairmanship, and Eleanor Lind chairs the family law group. One of the early tasks of the new division will be to decide what the priorities should be for the division and what additional working groups should be established. On the sheet that went out with the notes for the meeting, you'll see that some of the early discussions and ideas that we have for the division. Divisional meetings will take place every 6 weeks, and they'll take place here. But we will be working hard to make sure that there are opportunities and ways for people that can't get into the board's offices for the times of the meetings to be able to participate fully. So I would really encourage both regional deputies and others who would be able to participate remotely to still stand for the division. Gillian's reminding me that when I say here, I mean the Board of Deputies' offices in Toriano Mews, so apologies. Just to flag that we've set the date for the first divisional meeting, which is the 23rd of July, and we're hoping that divisional members will be able to attend, where possible, all meetings. I'm really keen that members will lead and join the working group. So again, it's not an opportunity to come and listen and just to debate what's going on around the table. We'll be setting an action plan, we'll be monitoring our progress against those actions and taking reports of what's been going on between meetings. More activities going to go on between meetings by deputies, and more engagement by deputies, and the meetings will be points at which we assess progress. But I look forward to talking to people in the fair in about half an hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Sachs, Belsize Square Synagogue. You referred to dealing with anti-Semitism. Will you be putting pressure on both the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to prosecute hate crimes against Jews? My impression is that the board has been a little slow in these areas. UK Lawyers for Israel have taken steps. I feel this is the proper domain for the Board of Deputies. I feel that the Crown Prosecution Service has been reluctant to take these matters further. I understand the need for evidence, but some of these crimes relate to publications and are quite clear, to my mind, hate crimes which should be prosecuted. In regard to other hate crimes where there are assaults of various sorts, I feel that there has not been sufficient police diligence in following that up, and I would like to see the board being proactive in those areas. What is your response?
So, firstly to say, we obviously stand against hate crime against Jews in any form that they take. But we work closely with the CST, who are the lead agency on this, and it won't always be appropriate for us to take the lead on those cases. But we obviously will and do work closely with the CST, who report to us at the Defence Division on a regular basis.
Can I actually add that I am currently supporting a private prosecution. It's against Nazim Hussein Ali, who spoke at the last Al-Quds demonstration a year ago, and he said, "Careful, careful, careful of those rabbis who belong to the Board of Deputies, who've got blood on their hands, who agree with the killing of British soldiers." So this is a private prosecution being brought against him by the Campaign for Anti-Semitism, and I am actually supporting that, and I've done a witness statement at the moment. So as well as working with the CST, that's something that's in progress.
Nathan Baroda, Union of Jewish Students. Congratulations, Amanda, on your election.
Thank you.
You mentioned about the board calling for an inquiry into Windrush, which is a really great step. I wondered whether the board would be calling for an inquiry into Islamophobia in the Conservative Party, building on the great work the board has done on challenging Islamophobia.
Thank you, Nathan. You will be aware that just last week, Marie, at the iftar that we hosted in London, said, "We'll never accept people inciting hatred against Muslims, whether this occurs on the street, online, or in any political party." We've also stated that anti-Muslim hatred is deeply worrying and a growing scourge on our society. It's the responsibility of all political parties to properly investigate racism in their ranks. And we will offer solidarity to Muslims who face prejudice. It's my understanding that the Conservative Party have stated what they're going to do, and that doesn't at this point say that they'll call for an inquiry. But we will continue to call out hatred wherever that appears in any party.
Chaim.
Chaim Ben Sion, Masorti movement, Masorti Judaism. A little controversial, this one, but Madam President, if I may, I refer to your comments regarding Ken Livingstone in your statement that you had to make, but I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. Regarding Ken Livingstone being allowed to escape expulsion from the Labour Party, and to your comments at the recent iftar event, which I applaud, when you said that the board will never accept anti-Muslim hate. With great regret and sadness, and some embarrassment, I suppose, I also noted the report in the JC of the alleged outrageous and unacceptable anti-Muslim and anti-Islam tropes of one of our own deputies.
So can I just stop you there? Because I think I know what you're talking about. There is an investigation that's ongoing at the moment, and it wouldn't be right for us to have any further discussion about that here on either side, because that is an investigation that's underway. So no disrespect. I know what you're saying, but it's not appropriate for the plenary.
I accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're done.
Thank you. Edwin.
Is that working? Fellow deputies, past and present, observers, non-observers, welcome all, good morning. I will be chairing the C&E division. C for communities, E for education. But don't let these two simple, harmless letters deceive you. This division is vast, and it covers, among others, education policy, interfaith relations, social action, community research, heritage and archives, outreach to represented groups, including women, young people, connection with the regions. This is a positive, vast, creative community. And what we're looking for is deputies to match these descriptions. Please, please, if you have a positive contribution, if you are coming in here to share with us best practice, something from your community, put your name for this division. I know the divisions are coming very soon, but even first-timers should see us in 20 minutes down here and Don't worry about not knowing the ropes. Everybody will. I'm also learning the ropes, especially on this division. So come, contribute, and make it happen. Change the board through this division. I tell you one thing. In the last couple of weeks, I had the privilege of going around to the outside world. The board is in a very fine shape. It really, honestly, as far as the outside world is concerned, does not need to change. The change needs to come from us. We need to raise our game in order to fulfill the expectation of the outside world on how they see this magnificent organization of 258 years. And we should all be proud to be part of this organization. I am looking more than skills and expertise. I'm looking for commitment, and I'm looking for people who want to celebrate with us. The division report, which I was not a chair of, as you know, gives you a hint of what this division does and can do. It is backed by the most fantastic staff that, honestly, I had the privilege. I did not know. I've been here years and years, but I did not know how much work goes behind the scene. We think that this is the plenary and the resolution. You come and see and spend a day at the board and see how 12 people work from morning to evening on fulfilling the expectations of what the community and the outside world expect of us. So here we have Jewish living tours, living exhibitions, Judaism, GSSE. We had a meeting with the Secretary of State, government consultations, religious education, community, interfaith, the works. Come and visit us at the stand here. Put your name, and let's together build a better 3 years for the board. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Stuart. Oh, sorry. There's one at the back. Two at the back. Flo and then Jerry, please. Flora. Sorry. You're there. Don't run. It's all right. Thank you, Flora.
I just feel, and Edwin spoke beautifully, but Sheila has to be praised to the hilt. She's been the most amazing chair of that Community Issues Division, and when Edwin said, you just don't know what's going on, you really do not know. She's been unrelenting in every single area that you mentioned. I don't want to take your time up, but I think we should give a big hand to Sheila.
Thank you.
Jerry, I hope you're going to say the same thing about me. He looks very tense.
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. First of all, congratulations to the top platform. I shall try this session to be a little easier on you.
That's very kind, and it is our first plenary, our first board meeting.
However,
we knew it had to come.
On behalf of a vast majority of deputies in the previous session, and I'm sure a majority of deputies in this session, I am going to plead for you to honour, without any hesitation, the agreements which we had and the binding vote we had to revert the seating plan to what it was. I don't want to hear any more nonsense about why it can't be done. It worked for many years. It's better for the board, and I don't want the staff of the board telling you what to be doing. It's your job as president to decide that what the deputies want takes precedence. Mr. Shuker, in your report, and I'm not blaming you, is the most important line of all the reports. It says that Edwin Shuker and Gillian Merron met Damien Hands, Secretary of State for Education, to discuss issues regarding Jewish schools and education. We haven't got a word about what you discussed. Did you raise the detestable decision of this Secretary of State to reverse his predecessor's decision on the 50% rule? If not, why not? If yes, what is he going to do? It's about time.
Sorry, you're on red, Jerry.
It's about time that decision was reversed for our Jewish schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm learning the ropes to be the chair. We went to see the Secretary of State primarily to congratulate him on his new position relatively, and he also wanted to meet the new team. We have discussed with him several issues, such as the 50% cap, such as the Ofsted reports, such as the unease in the ultra-Orthodox community. I am not at liberty to discuss his answers, I'm afraid. I am being watched carefully by Gillian Meron, the professional, and I have told you what we have raised. It was a fantastically cordial meeting. It was he had a lot of staff, about 10 people there, who got to know who we are and how do they connect with us when they need us. And his answers were candid, and if you want more information, I'm afraid you'll have to write to us, and then I will know what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say.
But basically, the Conservatives, what is being put, have gone back on their manifesto pledge on the 50% cap, and that has been put to them, that pledge was broken, and that is a concern. So that has been raised, if that's what your question was. Yeah.
Jonathan Davis, Golders Green. With apologies to Edward, I'm not sure what the seating plan has to do with his division, but as the issue has been raised, can I suggest that there are other views than the ones that Jerry has just expressed? And if you were minded to consider there should be a change, it should be brought to a vote of the current board rather than relying on a vote of the last board where there has been significant change in the composition of the board.
Thank you.
Ben Lewis, Finchley Reformed Synagogue. As well as what everyone here wants, there is what some people need. This was brought up in the last triennium by a good friend of mine and a fellow deputy, Hannah Brady, who said that she needed the seating plan to reflect her accessibility needs so that she could fully participate in these plenaries. Now, it's wonderful that we all have opinions, but at the end of the day, if people in our community can't access this space, then we cannot claim to be a representative space. So can I ask, can I implore the top table to, rather than see this as a majority rule situation, really strongly consider the accessibility needs of everyone in our community and put them first?
We definitely need to put the needs of the community first, and we will be assessing that. Thank you.
Can I just finish with thanking you all for entrusting us to serve you and the community for the next 3 years under the presidency of Marie. I want to say, strangely, even when we were all competing against each other, we did so with courtesy, respect, and genuine friendship. We will carry on with your support to do so for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart.
Against these people, and I don't like their grandstanding trying to persuade the more able amongst you to go into their divisions. In the forthcoming divisional elections, if you have skills in any of the following areas, whether it's financial management, general management, organizational change and development, investment, marketing, PR, brand development, fundraising, or risk management. In other words, if you have a brain and ability and you're nice, please stand for the F&O. That's my propaganda. Beyond that, I'm pleased to say that over the last 3 years, we faced two challenges, both of which I think that we stepped up to the plate for successfully. One of them was simply getting on as a group. When you have 16 members of a division, it's not always easy to strike a balance between everyone. We have become friends. This will carry on into the next triennium, I'm sure, but please come and see me, or at least put yourself forward. Now, the other challenge that we faced was a much more deep-seated one, which was that the board had been in a position of running a very deep, long-term and fundamental structural deficit. And this might sound very uncool and boring, but our finances were not in the shape they should have been. Now we're in the weird position of, for the first time, as one of the longer-serving deputies said to me the other day, we're in surplus for the first time in a century or a millennium, as it were. We may maintain this, but this is the crucial thing. On the income side of our equation, we are not so solid as may appear to be the case yet. We are not out of the woods, therefore, any of you who want to spend money, please, or have money off for anything, please bear in mind, we need to go through another 2 or 3 years like this to get ourselves onto a really solid footing. If we approach things properly, we may well get there. That's very much with your input, because without deputies playing out their representative aspect, the representative side of what they do, in other words, going back to their organizations and encouraging people to help us by paying the community contribution, by taking up their full representation rights, by participating in the President's Dinner, which Sheila Gawalb is going to lead the organization of again this year. If you don't play your part, we won't get there. It's really important that you make an input in the 3 years going forward. That's really all I'm going to say now, except just remember what I was saying at the beginning. If you're interesting and you're able, come with us. That's all.
Any questions for Stuart on his report? Okay, thank you. Now, it's really important that as many of you as possible become involved and stand for the division elections, which are going to happen on the 15th of July. Now, can I just clarify, there will be 16 places available on each division. It was previously 12, but it was increased to 16 at the last election. I think it's important for as many people to be involved as possible. Now, if you're not elected, I don't want you to worry, because it's very important that you'll be able to go along to the division meetings, but can you please really try to stand for something? I think it's very important that we get as many people along with us as possible, and during this triennium we will also have lots of other working groups where we will actively encourage involvement. After the President's statement, I'll go through the process for the election, because the timetable at the moment doesn't quite work, but we can resolve that. But we're going to spend half an hour, and can you perhaps talk amongst yourselves, get to know some of the new deputies, and go to the back of the room where you're going to find stands for each division so that they can tell you, particularly new deputies, more about the divisions. You can have a chance to chat to all of us and to have a think about something that you perhaps want to stand for. So can we just be back here at 3:30? Deputies, I want to begin my President's statement by asking everybody, please, to say a big mazel tov and stand up for Sir Ben Helfgott and Dame Louise Ellman MP. Hey! Now, Ben and Louise, can you make yourselves known? This is historic. Ben is here, and Louise is at the back. Woo! Also on the announcement, we have Jeremy and Louise Friedman on their 58th wedding anniversary. Hey! And condolences to Alex Brummer on the sad losses of his father and mother-in-law. Now, turning to the President's statement, I want to say and reiterate that I want to be a president for the whole of the UK. We are not going to be London-centric, and I started as I meant to go on, and I started in wonderful Manchester. Hey. I've met the Jewish Representative Council there. I've been to the wonderful social care facilities of the Fed. We met Andy Burnham MP, and went to the shore, and that was a really... went to the King David School, and also I've been to Scotland to see the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and we've also been to meet with Skojec and the Rep Council. We've got lots of visits that are in the diary at Leeds, Cardiff, Belfast, Oxford and Aberdeen. They're currently being planned, so we're going to make sure that all of the community around the UK find that we are going to be there to support you in the community, and we're going to be here for all Jews, and that's a promise that we're going to keep throughout this plenary. I've also already been to represent the UK community at the World Jewish Congress and the European Jewish Congress, and we had a monument which was opened at Theresen, which was a very, very moving ceremony, and I was privileged to be part of that. So we want to reassure you that we will carry on as we mean. Turning to the next item, I'm going to go through the President's statement and ask, when I highlight things, if anyone wants to add anything or to take questions. So I've set out my response in relation to the Gaza crises.
Robert Stone, Finchley Reformed Synagogue. I want to start this triennium on the right foot and actually praise the President of the Board of Deputies. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs taught me that the reason we follow Hillel rather than Shammai when they don't agree is not because of the proselyte on one leg, it's because Hillel always quoted Shammai's opinion with respect. And I'd like to praise the President and the outgoing President for the way they've handled the issues and the way they have argued, for example, in the letter to Yachad, which was, as it happens, I don't agree with what the President did before, but the letter to Yachad said, "We welcome the vibrant diversity of opinion in the community represented by your letter. We are proud of the dynamic, sometimes raucous tone of debate in the Jewish community over many issues, including the situation facing Israel." We can have raucous and vigorous debate, but I second the President's plea that we treat each other with respect, and that her condemnation of the virulence that some people, including friends of mine and fellow deputies of mine, were treated with when they went to the Kaddish. I didn't agree with the Kaddish, I wouldn't have gone myself, but I certainly wouldn't speak to people the way people spoke to my friends. So I hope that during this meeting and from now on throughout this triennium, we will treat each other with respect.
Thank you. I absolutely second that. And where we do have very diverse views, we have to find a way to work together and to listen to each other. Thank you. Mervyn.
Mervyn Smith Sutton. I would like to follow on in this vein of being polite to people. However, I have a problem with regard to Yachad. I had a problem when I first went to one of the presentations, and nothing has changed whatsoever. I am most concerned at the indoctrination of our young people, and this seems to be following through with a variety of people saying Kaddish, one of the most important prayers in our religion, and defacing it by using the area around Parliament to apply it to terrorists. If poor old Sidney Brichto, who was head of the liberal synagogues many years ago, he would be turning in his grave, and Hugo Gryn likewise, since it seemed to be mostly liberal and reform youngsters who were at the Kaddish ceremony. This is not the first time that Yachad has defied the Board of Deputies. They did it with the Article 2334, and they have done it again in going against the board with regard to Gaza. Is the board going to do anything about it? How many times do they get an opportunity then to be able to apply their thinking, which seems to be continuously to denigrate Israel? I have never heard anything positive with regard to Israel coming from them. and I'm very concerned with regard to youngsters. I certainly wouldn't, had we been in a position of putting children on trips to Israel, Yachad would not be the source.
You're on amber, and we've
seen.
got 6 people behind you.
Fine, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Look, I found the Kaddish for Gaza a very offensive misuse of a sacred rite. Yachad are entitled, as they did, to present a petition with their views, and we have a very, very diverse views of deputies that are here. And what we have to do, as been said from Robert Stone, we have to learn to disagree better and with respect. I found on both sides of the coin there was a huge amount of disrespect and abuse in the way that people's views were put forward. But I've made it clear that my personal feeling is that I was very offended by the Kaddish, which is a misuse. So we're going to have to move on to the next question because I've got too many speakers. Thank you. I have to move on. Sorry, Mervyn. Thank you.
Maurice Lawson of Reading Hebrew Congregation. I raised the question about a petition raised against the leadership of the board. In fact, Marie, you just mentioned, if I understood you correctly, because in the answer that you gave, you didn't deal with the question. What you dealt with was the Gaza crisis, which I hadn't asked about at all. My question didn't even mention Gaza. It was about raising a member of the Board of Deputies, a deputy, raising a public petition against the leadership of the board. Now, are you saying that that's perfectly acceptable, given that we've just sent out the code of conduct to everybody? It seems to me quite topical to deal with this particular thing. If I don't like your answer now, is it okay for me to go away and raise a public petition?
Yes. Yachad were entitled to represent their members, and they were entitled to raise a petition. The Board of Deputies, we are accountable to each other. We wouldn't be able to raise a petition. I don't agree with the matters that they've raised, but it was at least raised in a respectful way, and the Board of Deputies are here to be accountable. I'm making it clear that I do not agree. My statement and my response has made that clear, but they are within their rights to raise a petition. That of itself is not an abuse.
Okay.
Lawrence Julius, Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue, Holland Park. With all the recent publicity on the March of Return and Right of Return, could the board ensure that every time the board mentions the Palestinian refugees, the board ensures that the 850,000 Jews who fled or were forced to flee Arab lands are always also mentioned? It will ensure a better understanding and a more balanced discussion.
I think that's a very fair point, and I'm sure you will agree that Edwin Shuker has a huge amount of experience in telling people of the plight of Jews from Arab lands. Thank you for that. And we all have Uprooted, the book. Thank you. Tal.
Tal Offer, Chigwell and Hainault. Madam President, let me congratulate you again on your election and wish you success for the next 3 years. Thank you also for your reply to my question. I think it's really important to emphasize why this bullying and harassment that we've seen in the community for recent months has to stop. When someone's sending death threats to others, it is bullying. When someone tries to get someone sacked from their jobs, it's bullying. When someone inflames online hate, it's bullying. And when someone tries to get deputies removed, it is bullying. Although I said in the clearest terms that I oppose and denounce the Kaddish in Parliament Square, I receive a lot of abuse myself. Let me tell you some of the things that I got sent to. I was called capo, traitor, Judenrat. I think it's quite shocking. And there was even some member of the community who tried to organize a campaign, call on my shul to review my position as a deputy. What was my sin? The fact that I called for all bullying and harassment to stop. Madam President, yesterday we marked 2 years for the murder of Jo Cox MP. She was murdered because of her opinions and views, just as Israel's PM Rabin was assassinated because of his views. We can't afford to have something similar in our community. This incitement and language we've seen in recently can escalate to actual violence. Let's respect the difference of opinions in our community, and let's all remember we have more in common. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've already made the point, and it's been made by Robert, about treating each other with respect and not hurling abuse at people with different opinions. Joe.
Right. Joe Millis, Bromley Reform. I associate myself fully with everything that everybody said about your election. I'm sure it'll be fantastic 3 years ahead.
Is there a but coming?
There are no buts. No buts. No buts. No buts. No buts. It's too early for buts. What I'd like to say is, further to what has been said before, can you unequivocally, without any ifs or buts, ensure people here that you will not brook from any member of the board or from any members of the community outside the board, and I'm talking specifically about a United Synagogue rabbi, and I hope you've had words with the chief rabbi about this, or will do, that you will not brook doxing, dogpiling, or gaslighting of other members of the community. These, or indeed calling people capos or anything else from the Nazi era. Capos were capos. We are completely different. Now, I too was totally against the Kaddish in the square. I think it was completely wrong. I think it was, frankly, stupid and really not called for. But the way some people have reacted here, even people in this room, has been abysmal, and I hope that there will be unequivocal, as I say, unequivocal, no ifs, no buts, condemnation of those people. Thank you.
Can I just say that the Kaddish incident has brought out the worst in people with abuse being hurled, but it's also brought about a recognition of a discussion we needed to have long ago about respect, because that's been lacking. So at least there is a silver lining that we've been able to have this discussion at the beginning of the plenary, and we know that we have to treat each other differently if we're going to be a united, unified community, because that's what's really important. Unequivocally, we need to try. We all need to do our very, very best. However difficult the circumstances are, we must treat each other with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Norma Frankel, Edgware United Synagogue. This is to do with the Gaza situation. Why does Channel 4 News, especially on a Friday night, and this was on June the 1st, from 7 to 8 p.m., spend 10 plus minutes with propaganda for Gaza, i.e. children being shot, being carried on a stretcher, mourning children by religious Muslims, etc., with bullets whizzing by all the time? Has any counter-program showing the suffering of the Israelis and of her soldiers being shown? If you write to the BBC, they will only take notice of a great number of letters regarding a program, rather than one letter signed by many.
We know that double standards are applied to Israel. We share your concern. And Israel, the security needs of Israel need to be promoted sympathetically, and that is a real concern. The position needs to be put forward for the case for Israel, especially where their security is threatened. And we understand that if people are marauding the boundary fence and they want to murder and kill people in Israel, of course Israel is going to have to defend its borders, but every loss of life is a tragedy. We have to look at that, but we need to get the message across in a sympathetic way, because to many Jews, and most Jews, Israel is a big part of our identity, and I share your concern. Double standards are applied to Israel. Where are the criticisms of Syria, the 4,000 Palestinians that have been killed there? I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Gideon Smith, freshly minted deputy for Hampstead Suburb Synagogue. Also want to congratulate Marie, fellow game changer, on her appointment as president. We look forward to following your leadership and occasionally robustly debating with you. Just for clarification, in my spare time when I'm not deputy for HGSS, I'm also chair of Yachad, and I understand that there's lots of people who have various views and thoughts. I would encourage anybody who is concerned to please come and talk to me about why we are convinced that, why we are passionate Zionists about Israel, come and talk to me here, come and talk to me in Hampstead Garden Suburb, come and talk to me in Israel, and I'm happy to clarify, share our views. But I'm not here as chair of Yachad, I'm here as a deputy for HCSS. And last week in Shul, our rabbi in his sermon talked about Shivim Panim LeTorah, 70 faces of the Torah. That does not mean that every single view is acceptable, but there are many, many views out there. And I want to reiterate what Robert Stone said about the need for respectful debate. Rabbi Lord Sachs, in his commentary on Korach yesterday, spoke about why the issue with Korach was not that he argued with Moshe, it was how he argued. The fact that it was not done with respect, the arguments were not for the sake of heaven. I'm really looking forward to joining the Board of Deputies, being part of robust debate, but all those arguments must be for the sake of heaven. Please, I look forward to joining you in debate about Israel and other things for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mervyn.
Malvin Benjamin, Hendon United Synagogue. I'm glad that the previous speaker brought up the Seder of yesterday of Korach, because Korach taught us what it is when we disagree and the kind of problems that result from that. I am very concerned about the role of Yachad within this board. I think that they undermine the position of the board. And it seems to me that they are a luxury that we cannot afford to have. I'm particularly concerned that they feel it right to go outside the board, not just confine their disagreements within the plenum, but to go outside on the basis of petitions. And I just feel that this undermines the integrity of the board and is a criticism of the board structure. In the circumstances, as I said earlier, I think that they are a luxury we cannot afford. And although we should treat each other with deference and respect, it goes both ways. And I think that we should be treated by the same token with deference and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. But I would say that a petition was a polite way of giving me the message. I didn't get abuse, and at least was done in a respectful way, even if I disagree entirely with the contents. I made it clear in my reply. Thank you. Last question, because I'm really sorry, we are going to be running late.
It's Jonathan Goldblum, Masikedas. I'm quite upset by a lot of what's going on in this talk here. I'll tell you why. There was a prominent person for 44 years, a member here, not only a member, as a honorary officer. And he's got up in this plenum and he said that this was an Arab village near, that it was claimed that Jews had put poisoned chicken down a well, and he had no reason to disbelieve it. Now, do you realize what lack of respect this was? And you had no evidence for it. This is a disrespect to the tens of thousands of people who live over the border of the line. This was without any evidence. Not one person not one person on the top here said one word about it. This particular person had caused provocations against the spirit and against the attitude of the people who are running the Board of Deputies. This Board of Deputies will only get respect from the community when it treats the community, the Jewish people here and the people in Israel, with respect. And I think that given lots of what's happening, where people say things, where people who had their relatives murdered by Nazis, like my mother-in-law had her whole family, and my father-in-law escaped from all these places. If somebody said they hate or they can't stand it, are you going to say that that person can't be a member of the Board of Deputies? Now, respect has to come everywhere. It has to be equal. And I haven't got a feeling that, with due respect, who is going to judge all these things? We've got people on the Constitution Committee who themselves have to be nominated by the the executive. And then who says that they are representing the members? Who says that these people are objective? A lot of us have passionate things in this. You need somebody who deals with these matters, who's dispassionate and fair. And I feel that this board has not been fair. They've not been equal-minded.
Thank you for your view. I'm going to have to say this is the last question because you're going to have to be quick because we have to move on. Rob, I'm sorry. And can, in future, anyone be invited to come to the microphone in the nicest possible way? Thank you. And would you say who you are because you're new?
Yes.
So
my name is Joel Graham.
Speak.
I'm from Ner Yisrael Synagogue in Hendon. I'm a new deputy here, and it's a pleasure to be, volunteering with all of you. I think that I just wanted to make the point of when the Nazis rolled through most cities and countries between 1930 and 1945, they didn't ask whether the Jew was liberal or whether they were conservative or whether they were Orthodox, or they said, round up all the Jews. That was their main issue. I'm modern Orthodox. I don't mind anybody that's anything else because we're all Jewish. And I feel that if the board, from being in one meeting, if what we're trying to do is change the attitude outside of the board, if we have so much bickering within it, it's quite ironic for the work that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. I'm going to now move on to the next point on the statement very quickly because we're running very much out of time. Has anybody got anything they want to add on the National Union of Students? And I just want to say that I will be liaising, we will be with UJS in relation to our reply, what we're going to be doing about that motion. Thank you. The Labour Party, I think that's been set out. But if anyone's got any questions, they're going to have to be quick. So I'm going to give the floor to Dame Louise. Hey.
Louise Ellman, Jewish Labour Movement. I just wanted to make it very clear, President, and to everyone else, that the Jewish Labour Movement is continuing its very strong campaign against anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And we are complaining about the appointment of Gordon Nardell as the in-house lawyer. We're concerned about the redefinition of anti-Semitism after being told by the Labour Party that the full international definition of anti-Semitism had been accepted. That's now being reinterpreted to mean something else. We are fighting that as well. And our campaign will continue. And it's also important for everybody to know that much as we do have a problem with the leadership of the party and the people around the leadership, who are not all elected members, there are many MPs and members of the Labour Party who are extremely concerned about what is happening and who support what we do. And that shows in terms of Labour MPs who speak out in our meetings at the Cross-Party Committee Against Anti-Semitism, which is chaired by West Streeting, the MP for Ilford North. There is strong support within the Labour Party for our cause, and we know how difficult this is, we know what we're up against, but we are not giving up, and I hope we will be able to continue working with the board, because we should all remember that a key point was reached when the board, together with the JLC, organised that demonstration in Parliament Square. That gave voice to a frustration and anger that had been building up, and I hope we can continue our association. But the voice of Labour MPs and Labour members against what is happening in the Labour Party in relation to anti-Semitism is loud and strong and will continue.
Thank you very much. Warren.
Warren Usden for Yeshurun Hebrew Congregation in South Manchester. It's hard to follow Dame Louise on anything to do with the Labour Party, but what I did want to say is that it appears to me that time is rapidly running out for the Labour Party to get its house in order, and in the same way, I think time is running out for the board to build on what has happened in the last few months to get them to do so. And I say this because I strongly believe that the appointment of Gordon Nardell is a slap in the face for this community. I don't think his unsuitability for the role, bearing in mind his past associations and conflicts, can be. I think it's very, very important. You've got a meeting coming up in July, so it might be the last opportunity to speak to the honorary officers before then, but I think it's hugely important that you go into that meeting with very, very firm objectives. And I think the minimum has to be, and this is why we've got such difficulty with Gordon Nardell, is there has to be a commitment. There has to be an unequivocal commitment to, and I don't think they'll give it, to the IHRA definition, because everything has got to flow from that. Everything we're asking the Labour Party to do. And very quickly, I'd also like to say, if we are asking the Labour Party to have zero tolerance and clean hands, we must not be open to charges of hypocrisy. We must ourselves show ourselves that we in this board have a zero tolerance to Islamophobia, to certain views which may be expressed, and I'm not talking about any particular case, but we cannot condemn the Labour Party for letting members' passions get ahead of themselves when we allow people to do it here. So we've got to tread this very carefully.
Can I just clarify that no details yet have actually been given about a meeting with the Labour Party to be held in July. I share the concerns about the pretension of independence of Mr. Nardell, and there are certainly concerns about his affiliations and friendships which cast serious doubt on his ability to be independent. I absolutely accept that, including his Facebook friends with, for example, Tony Greenstein, who's been expelled for his abuse using the term Zio, and there's also concerns that he's been for many years a member of the Hard Left Labour Representation Committee, which in relation to the departure of Ken Livingstone claimed that was a major setback. So I accept there are serious misgivings. Thank you.
Carol Abrahams, Catford and Bromley Synagogue. I attended the AGM of Lewisham Borough a couple of weeks ago, the inauguration of our new directly elected mayor, the previous one having stood down. Lewisham is a completely Labour borough. We are the only shul in Lewisham Borough. The previous mayor was a good friend of the shul. The new mayor, his first action as mayor was to appoint a mayoress. The mayoress is a member of our shul who came over on the kinder transport, goes into local schools to talk about what it's like arriving in Britain as a child on your own, a refugee. We have a lot of refugees in Lewisham. The borough's very proactive. The mayor beat off momentum to get his nomination, and he also made sure that the nomination for Lewisham East to replace Heidi Alexander was also a Labour MP, a new Labour MP, Janet Darby, who is most definitely not momentum. This is really to say, as Louise says, there are a lot of friends in the Labour Party, and please can we not lose faith.
Thank you. Carrying on, you'll have to forgive, I have to speed up. I want to commend King's College again for adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. They also follow LSE, which I also commend, as well as 130 odd other councils, and that's very important that we continue to press for the acceptance in Labour of the IHRA definition and all of the examples. Are there any more questions? Because I now need to move on to the validation of deputies. Okay, thank you. And I really need to keep on track. It's 4:10.
Jonathan Davis, Golders Green Synagogue. The official Kensington Palace announcement of Prince William's programme for his visit to the Middle East next week says the following, I quote, "The next day's programme in the occupied Palestinian territories will begin with a short briefing on the history and geography of Jerusalem's Old City from a viewing point at the Mount of Olives. Will the board add to that briefing by telling Prince William and those who advise him of the Jewish community's thousands of years history of the Mount of Olives?"
Well, the Chief Rabbi, I understand, is going to be spending a substantial amount of time with Prince William, so I'm sure he'll be pleased to do that. And Gillian and I will also be present at a reception, so I'm sure we'll be able to pass on the message. Thank you.
Gary Mond, the JNF. I want to follow on from Joel Braham's question, which is in the President's statement. We face a really tough battle in the fight against anti-Semitism and in stopping our enemies from delegitimizing Israel. I have every confidence in Marie and Amanda in doing an excellent job in this respect. But the task facing us in the war against the Jew haters is a huge one. And however hard we try and however successful we are in raising the finance to enable the board's operations to be expanded, this is not something that we can do without help. I feel strongly that this board needs to be prepared to work much more closely with the myriad of other groups who share our hopes and aspirations. We need to cooperate with organisations who share our loathing of anti-Semitism and Israel bashing, but who are also not in any way racist or political extremists. Of course, we work with the JLC and with the CST, but further examples of entities whose activities we should endorse include the growing number of Friends of Israel groups, many of which were set up by Stephen Jaffe from the Board of Deputies, and established groups such as the Zionist Federation, Stand With Us, and the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. We must bring to an end the turf wars attitude which has pervaded our community for so many years, where we wash our hands of other people's praiseworthy initiatives, and in return, they wash their hands of ours. So when the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism plays a key role in getting Alison Chablos successfully prosecuted for anti-Semitism, we should rejoice too. And when the Zionist Federation organises a counter-rally against Hezbollah supporters on Al-Quds Day, as they did last Sunday, we should be offering our wholehearted support. Indeed, the bravery of Mark Lewis, the lawyer with multiple sclerosis and incidentally a former deputy, in confronting the mass acts of Hezbollah supporters in a wheelchair should be a leading feature on our website rather than being ignored. I wish Marie and Amanda all the best of luck.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to just to discuss the election situation. Right, we understand that there have been a lot of concern, both from old deputies returning and new deputies, about the process for registering deputies. That will be resolved, but I just want to focus now on the elections for the divisions, because they are going to happen on the 15th of July. Now, we've got a lot of new deputies, so please bear with me. The process needs to have a nomination to be put forward for election, and 2 people will need to nominate a deputy for that. And then the nominations themselves need to be submitted. The constitution of the board is online, but according to C1 of the constitution, 38 days notice has to be given to you deputies from the board inviting you to submit nominations, and if the election is going to be on the 15th of July, then obviously the timetable is not going to work. Also, once an individual deputy has been nominated, there has to be 17 days back, a notice of that to the board before the vote, and that's C2 of the Constitution. So we will be changing this. This isn't going to happen again, because during this triennium we are going to update the Constitution so that it's now updated and fit for a modern organisation, but we need to get through what we need to do to make a change to allow the timetable to work so that we can get through this and we can avoid this for the future. So what we need to do is to propose to all of you that a resolution is going to be put to the deputies by way of a special meeting. This will be on the 15th of July itself, so that you can ratify a shorter timetable, both for the nominations to be sent to you deputies and also for the nominations to be received back. And what we're proposing to do is to move the date to the 5th of July so that we can receive the nominations back on the 5th of July and proceed with the election day on the 15th. Now, we can't do the resolution today, but I wanted to get a show of hands to check that you would be agreeable to having this resolution on the 15th of July, and if so, we will then on the 19th of June send out the invitations for nomination for standing for the divisions. Now, I don't know if anyone wants me to repeat this, but I wanted to ask you to give me your approval by a non-binding showing of hands whether you're prepared to shorten that process so that we can proceed with the elections on the 15th of July, as we did 3 years ago. This isn't the first time. Thank you. Does anyone object? It's an easier. Thank you. This is the second time we've done it. It happened 3 years ago, so this won't happen again. Thank you very much. Sheila is now going to talk to you for 5 minutes about the new Deputies programme. She will keep to 5 minutes, otherwise we're not going to finish on time at 4:30. Thank you, Sheila.
Joe has
one question, very quick, please.
Joe Millis, Bromley Reform. This is connected to the whole process of the election. For a start, we seem to have changed the rules, although, yes, the Constitution Committee did say send out nominations, but for the past 2 triennials, we didn't. I want to know why all of a sudden they do. Now, if it's a question of democracy and openness, then I'm afraid we do demand this, well, I'm not afraid that we do demand this of other organisations such as the Labour Party, quite correctly, but somehow in this organisation there is no openness and no transparency when it comes to disciplinary matters. And I wonder if this is, going to change in this triennium. Thank you.
What I propose to do about this is to set up a working group. We're going to have a redraft of the Constitution. It needs to be updated. Also in relation to the Code of Conduct, we need to have streamlining for the whole of the election process. We need to look at the definition of members. I think we need to allow schools to become members. And it's a document that has a need of a complete redraft. I absolutely take on the concerns raised by Joe, and I suggest the best way to actually get the job done is to have a special working group to do a first draft, and that can then be sent to the FNO and the Constitution Committee, and then it will come for consultation. So this isn't going to happen again, and all sorts of issues are going to be addressed in the Constitution to bring it up to date and make it a modern working document. Anything? Jerry? It really will have to be quick. We are finishing at 10:30. 4. But we might be 10:30 at this rate. It does. Please don't run.
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. I don't mind 10:30. I'm sure others deputies won't mind either. I just want to clarify, and it's important. You have indicated that the closing date for nominations for the divisions will be the 5th of July. This is a warning for all deputies not yet registered. It's your duty to speak to your synagogue, your officers, to make sure that the paperwork that the board requires is handed in or sent to the board well before the 5th of July. Otherwise, you will not be eligible to be nominated for a division. And that is a great shame. Marie, you've correctly pointed out, and I hope this is going to be acceptable to the other ordinary officers, any deputy is entitled, I move the amendment, I pass the amendment to the Constitution. Any deputy is entitled to attend a division as an observer. There are very rarely votes in a division, and she will no doubt explain all that. But the point that has to be emphasised, the board staff are overwhelmed with the paperwork involved in registering deputies, and it's vital that every deputy who has yet to be registered contacts their shul in the next few days to make sure the paperwork's in order so that you can be eligible to stand for a division, even if you don't want to. Otherwise, it's going to cause a lot of problems. I hope that helps and clarifies.
Thank you very much. And I really agree with you that you must go to your shores if your papers are not in, because the board has to have the documentation. Can I just say, a very nice pair of glasses have just been handed in. If anyone would like to come and see me, who they belong to. I'm sure they can see enough because they're not wearing them. But if you know who they are, otherwise we'll hand them in. One more question. Yes, please. A new deputy. Thank you.
Ben Crown, and I'm the deputy for Limud. Just bearing in mind, as Jerry kindly noted, the short timetable that remains between now and nominations, and the fact that various organisations, mine included, has not yet managed to fully line up with the board in terms of providing necessary paperwork. Unless I'm misreading the board's constitution, under section A3 in Appendix A, A6 in Appendix A, where the rules for validation are outlined, it appears that if the president or comparable officer of a nominating body, of any of the members here, writes to the board, the Constitutional Committee, and says, these are the reasons why our paperwork is incomplete, it's at the discretion of the chair of the Constitution Committee to validate that deputy. In the light of the large backlog, and the fact that this process may well be more straightforward than gathering necessary paperwork for all the 120 plus deputies who are currently observers, can the chair of the Constitution Committee confirm that he will be happy to validate deputies under that route?
Before you get there, I think the paperwork that's required is not extensive, and if there were exceptional circumstances, but this is a responsibility also of deputies to chase their organisations. The Board of Deputies doesn't require extensive documentation. But yes. Go on, Tony.
The section that's just been referred to, A6 of the Constitution, is for use in exceptional circumstances. Some things are fundamental. One of the things that's fundamental is that deputies are elected. There are some shuls who, two shuls which have, or one shul and one organisation which said they're not having, didn't have an election, they've just appointed someone. That's not something that can just be waved through. And shuls do need, for example, to demonstrate that they've sought nominations by sending a nomination form to the board. When things like that don't occur, they're not special circumstances, they're things we ask the shul to put right, which they can pretty easily do. So that's the answer.
If there's any problems, you should come and see us that you feel that you can't get over, and we will help with the documentation if we can, but we should be able to complete it unless there are exceptional circumstances.
It just seems there are 120 or so people.
Everyone, I'm afraid, everyone's got all different reasons. I won't go into all different reasons what there are, but there's so many different ones. And I'm really sympathetic, but there's time to sort it out. So we'll have to move on because we have to finish at 4:30. I'm now going to ask Sheila. She's only now going to have 4 minutes at most. Sorry, Sheila, to talk about the new deputies programme, as I have to do closing comments. I'm very sorry. No disrespect. We do not have any more time.
Okay,
Sheila.
thank you, Marie. It won't take me 4 minutes. I can make this really short. I'm delighted that there are so many new people who want to be part of the board and have been elected to be new deputies. And I hope those that are here today haven't found it too confusing and have been able to pick up on the sort of things that go on during our meetings. But I would like to inform you of a new deputies programme that involves new deputies and those deputies who have been here who have previous experience, however long that may be. What we are doing is we are coordinating through Ruth Friedman. Ruth, would you like to stand up, please? Thank you. Ruth has worked with me for many years, and she has volunteered to be the person, the go-to person through me. If you're a new deputy and you want to have a person to buddy up or to be a mentor, you know, the format is such that new deputies will ask us if they can be mentored, and experienced deputies will contact me and then to Ruth to explain why they feel they should be mentoring somebody. And we hope we can put people together. This is not prescriptive, but this is a way that people, once they are introduced to each other, can work out the best way that they can meet and how they can learn about the work of the board. I sat for an hour and a half before this meeting with 2 new deputies, and I could have gone on for 3 or 4 hours because there are so many facets and things to understand about the amazing work we do, the way we're set up, the way we should go out to the community and spread the word about who we are. We're all ambassadors for the board as well as being ambassadors for Judaism. And I want to see everybody have the opportunity to be able to do this and give the best they possibly can to help with the work of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Just moving on to my closing remarks, I want to thank all of you for coming here today. We've had really high attendance, and we are all, on behalf of the staff and the honorary officer team, very proud of the trust that you have placed in us to represent you. We should be proud of the Board of Deputies. We are the envy of many other faiths because we are organised. We should give ourselves credit in a way where we can really represent the voice of UK British Jewry. We have an excellent team, and we're going to work very hard during this triennium. What's really important, and is coming over as the message from today, is as a community, we cannot afford to be divided in these times. We will be much better if we are together. We will be stronger. We need to maintain unity. And where there isn't agreement, we can have disagreement. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to do it in a place where we can respect and maintain relations with each other. We're very much looking forward to working with you. Any questions that you've got, please come and see us at the end. The staff are all here to be delighted to serve you and to help with anything that you feel that you want to know. And it's very important that you do try and stand for election, and if not, to take an interest in the division and the work, and there'll be plenty of working groups throughout this triennium for you to take part in. And we really thank you for giving up your time today and for all the very hard work that you do as deputies. Thank you.